The bridge of the UES Vanguard was silent, except for the low hum of the engine and the soft beeping of the sensors. Outside the massive windows, the stars looked cold and distant. It was a quiet day in the Viridian Gap. This place was a line in space, a border between the territory of Earth and the territory of the Zealot Empire. For a long time, this line had been respected. But lately, things were changing. Captain Tom stood with his hands behind his back, looking out at the darkness. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen many battles. He wore the simple black uniform of the Earth Defense Force. He did not look angry, but he looked serious. He knew that peace was fragile. It was like a thin glass that could break easily. "Status report," Tom said. His voice was calm and low. Lieutenant Mike sat at the communication station. He was a young man, fresh from the academy. He looked nervous. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, checking the screens for any signs of trouble. So far, there was nothing. But Mike felt a knot in his stomach. He had a bad feeling about today. "Everything is clear, Captain," Mike said. "No signals on the radar. No movement in the sector." Ensign Ellis stood at the tactical station. She was responsible for the weapons and shields. She had sharp eyes and always paid attention to the smallest details. She watched a screen that showed a map of the star system. "Sensors are active, Captain," Alice said. "Long-range scanners are picking up some dust clouds, but that is normal. No ships are detected." Captain Tom nodded slowly. "Good. Keep your eyes open. The Zealots have been sending small probes across the line for weeks. They are testing us. They want to see how fast we react." "They are aggressive," Alice said. "They think they are better than everyone else." "They have a big fleet," Tom said, "and they have powerful weapons. But they are not us." For a long time, humanity had lived in peace, building ships and exploring the stars. But when they met the Zealot Empire, they found an enemy that did not want to talk. The Zealots wanted to conquer. They looked at Earth and saw a weak planet filled with primitive people. They thought they could take whatever they wanted. 3 weeks ago, the Earth government had sent a message to the Zealot leaders. It was a simple message, broadcasted on every frequency. "Do not cross the Viridian Gap. This is your only warning. Stay on your side of the line, and there will be no war. Cross the line, and you will face the consequences." The Zealots had laughed at the message. They did not believe that humans were brave enough to fight. They thought it was a bluff, a trick from a scared species. Mike looked up from his screen. His face went pale. "Captain," Mike said. His voice shook a little. "I am reading a signal. It is big. It is very big." Tom turned around. "What is it, Mike?" "I am detecting a warp signature," Mike said. "It is crossing the border right now." Alice looked at her tactical map. Red lights began to flash on her screen. "Captain, I see it too. It is not a probe. It is a warship. Wait, I am reading more signatures. Multiple ships. Put it on the main screen," Tom ordered. The large screen at the front of the bridge changed. The stars shifted, and suddenly, a massive shape appeared. It was a Zealot heavy cruiser. It was black and pointed, with sharp edges and glowing blue engines. It was huge, much bigger than the Vanguard. Behind it, smaller destroyers appeared, one by one. They moved with confidence, their weapons powered up. Tom watched the screen. He did not panic. He had expected this. The line had been drawn, and now the enemy was stepping over it. "They are crossing the Viridian Gap," Alice said. She sounded angry. "They are inside our territory." "Hail them," Tom said. Mike worked the controls. "Channel open, Captain. They can hear us." Tom stepped forward to the communication console. He spoke clearly so his voice would be heard on the enemy bridge. "This is Captain Tom of the Earthship, Vanguard," he said. "You have crossed the border established by the Earth government. You are violating our space. Turn your ships around immediately and return to your territory. This is your final warning. If you do not retreat, we will open fire." There was a moment of silence. The crew waited for a response. On the screen, the Zealot ships kept moving. They did not slow down. They did not turn around. They continued to fly deeper into human space. Then, a voice came over the speaker. It was a mechanical, cold voice. It was the translation of the Zealot commander. "Human vessel. the voice said. "Your warnings are empty. You are primitives. You are dust beneath our feet. We do not take orders from cattle. Move aside or be destroyed." Tom looked at the screen. The heavy cruiser was charging its main weapon. A blue light grew brighter at the front of the alien ship. The destroyers were spreading out, preparing to attack. Tom looked at his crew. He saw fear in Mike's eyes, but he also saw determination in Alice's. They were ready. They were humans. They did not start fights, but they always finished them. "Did you hear that?" Tom asked quietly. "Yes, sir," Alice said. "They called us cattle." Tom nodded. "They think we are weak. They think we will run away." Tom walked back to the center of the bridge. He stood tall. He straightened his uniform. The time for talking was over. Earth had given a warning. The zealots had ignored it. Now they had to learn the hard way. "Shields up," Tom commanded. Alice hit a button. "Shields are active, Captain." "Charge the railguns," Tom said. "Prepare the plasma torpedoes. Target their lead cruiser." "Weapons charged and locked," Alice replied. Mike looked at his captain. He knew what was about to happen. They were going to fight a much bigger fleet. The odds were not good. But looking at Tom, he felt a sudden courage. Tom looked at the main screen one last time. The alien ships were closing in, arrogant and powerful. "They crossed the line," Tom said. His voice was hard as iron. He paused for a second, looking at the red warning lights flashing on the bridge. "Engage," Tom ordered. The Vanguard shook slightly as the weapon systems came to life. The calmness of the bridge vanished, replaced by the sounds of war. The silence of the Viridian Gap was broken. The human ship turned its guns toward the enemy, ready to face the consequences. The bridge of the Vanguard transformed instantly. The quiet, low hum of the ship was replaced by the loud, screaming sirens of combat. Red lights flashed everywhere, bathing the faces of the crew in a crimson glow. The smell of ozone filled the air as the weapon systems powered up. On the main screen, the Zealot fleet loomed closer. The heavy cruiser looked like a mountain of black steel in space. Its blue engines glowed brightly as it accelerated. Ignoring the threat of the human ship, the aliens were confident. They believed their shields were perfect and their technology was far superior to anything humans could build. They expected the Vanguard to turn and run, or perhaps fire a few useless lasers that would bounce harmlessly off their hull. Captain Tom stood in the center of the chaos. He did not move. He watched the tactical map, his mind calculating distances and timing. "Enemy firing solution acquired," Alice shouted over the noise. "They are locking onto us, Captain." "Let them lock," Tom said calmly. "Helm, prepare for Ghost Drive jump. Short range only. Coordinate Alpha 3. The helmsman, a young man named Joe, gripped the steering controls tightly. "Ghost Drive ready, Captain. Coordinates set." The Zealot heavy cruiser fired. A massive beam of purple energy shot out from its front. It was a terrifying weapon, capable of melting through a planet's crust in minutes. The beam streaked across the void of space, heading straight for the Vanguard, but the beam hit nothing but empty space. A split second before the beam arrived, the Vanguard. It did not fly away, it simply folded space and jumped. The ship reappeared instantly, not kilometers away, but directly behind the enemy fleet. The Zealot commanders were confused. On their sensors, the human ship had disappeared. Then, suddenly, the Vanguard was right behind them, floating silently in their blind spot. "Now," Tom said, his voice cutting through the sirens, "fire at will." Alice did not hesitate. She slammed her hand onto the firing console. "Railguns, fire! Plasma torpedoes, away!" The Vanguard shuddered as it unleashed its payload. Unlike the energy beams of the aliens, human weapons were physical and brutal. The ship's massive railguns used magnets to shoot solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. These slugs were not made of ordinary metal. They were heavy, dense alloys designed to crush anything they hit. 30 massive projectiles tore through the silence of space. They moved so fast that the sensors could barely track them. The Zealot destroyers at the back of the formation never stood a chance. Their energy shields were designed to stop lasers and plasma, not solid metal slugs traveling at a fraction of the speed of light. The slugs passed right through the shields as if they were smoke. They smashed into the hulls of the alien destroyers with devastating force. On the screen, Tom watched the enemy ships erupt. The metal slugs punched deep into the ships, tearing through engines, reactors, and corridors. 3 destroyers exploded simultaneously, turning into bright fireballs that lit up the darkness. Debris scattered in every direction. "Direct hits on destroyers 3, 4, and 5, Alice reported. She sounded focused, her fear replaced by the rhythm of battle. "They are breaking apart, sir." The heavy cruiser turned slowly, trying to bring its main guns to bear on the human ship that had appeared behind it, but the Vanguard was already moving. It was a human design philosophy. Do not stay still. Make yourself a hard target. Load second salvo, Tom ordered. Target their engines. I do not want them running away. Mike watched his communication board. He saw the enemy signals going crazy. "Captain, I am intercepting their internal chatter. They are panicking. They're asking for help." "They realize too late that we are not cattle," Tom said. "Helm, move us to the upper quadrant. Keep us mobile." The Vanguard's engines flared, pushing the ship in a sharp arc. The aliens fired again, but the human ship was too fast and too erratic. The purple beams missed, carving deep scars into the asteroid field nearby. "Torpedoes away," Alice announced. 6 glowing red orbs shot out from the Vanguard. These were plasma torpedoes, warheads filled with superheated matter. They tracked the Zealot heavy cruiser, adjusting their course as the alien ship tried to dodge. The Zealot commander activated every point defense weapon he had. Small lasers shot into space, trying to shoot down the torpedoes. 2 of the torpedoes were destroyed early, exploding harmlessly in the void. But the others got through. 3 plasma torpedoes slammed into the rear of the heavy cruiser. The explosions were blinding, even from a distance. The shields of the cruiser flickered and died under the intense heat. The torpedoes melted the heavy armor of the alien ship, exposing its internal structure. "Target hit," Alice said. "Their engines are disabled. They are drifting, Captain." The heavy cruiser was now dead in the water. It floated helplessly, smoke and gas venting from its hull. The remaining destroyers stopped their advance. They saw what happened to their leader. They saw the destruction of the powerful ships. The arrogance was gone, replaced by fear. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the crew waited for the next order. Mike wiped sweat from his forehead. His hands were shaking on the console, but he did not look away from the screen. "Status of the enemy fleet?" Tom asked. "They are regrouping, Captain," Alice said. "But they are keeping their distance. They are hesitant to engage." Tom looked at the damaged heavy cruiser. It was a sitting duck. The aliens had crossed the line, thinking it was a joke. Now they were paying the price. "Hailed him again," Tom said. Mike looked up. "Sir?" "You heard me," Tom said. "Open a channel." Mike pressed the buttons. The channel was open. "Zealot vessels," Tom said, his voice booming across the communication frequency. "You have been warned. You crossed the line, and we have destroyed your Vanguard. You have one chance to turn around and leave this system. If you stay, we will destroy every single ship you have. This is not a bluff. This is the consequence." The bridge was silent for a moment. Everyone waited for the reply. Finally, the alien voice returned. It was not as arrogant as before. It sounded shaky and angry. "You use tricks," the voice said. "You use dirty weapons. You do not fight like honorable warriors." Tom smiled a cold smile. "We fight to win. Leave now." On the screen, the remaining destroyers seemed to waver. Their engines flickered. They looked at the burning wreckage of their comrades and then at the human ship, which looked undamaged and deadly. The heavy cruiser tried to fire its thrusters, but only sparks came out. "They are powering up their warp drives," Alice said suddenly. "Not to attack, but to flee." "Let them go," Tom said. Chase them for a few kilometers just to remind them who is in charge, then break off. The Vanguard accelerated, its nose pointed at the retreating enemy. The alien ships vanished into warp speed one by one, running away as fast as they could. They left their heavy cruiser behind, abandoned and crippled. The silence returned to the bridge. The sirens stopped, but the red lights remained on. The crew let out a collective breath. They had won the skirmish, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Mike looked at the screen where the heavy cruiser was drifting. "Captain, we defeated the patrol. But what about the main fleet? They will know what happened here." Tom nodded. "Yes, they will, and they will be angry. But they will also be afraid. Today, we showed them that we are not weak. Today, we will also be afraid. Today, we showed them that we are not weak. We made them respect the line." Tom walked over to the window and looked out at the stars. The Viridian Gap was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the quiet after a storm. "Report damage," Tom said. "Minor damage to the outer hull only, Captain," Alice replied. "Shields held at 90%. We are fully operational." Tom turned back to his crew. "Good work, everyone. But stay alert. They will come back. And when they do, we must be ready to finish this." The Vanguard floated alone in the vast darkness, guarding the border. The humans had crossed no line, but they had drawn one in blood. The warning had been issued, and the consequences had been delivered. The news of the battle at the Viridian Gap spread quickly, not just across Earth, but to the furthest human colonies. On Earth, the government leaders did not celebrate for long. The victory at the border was proof that human ships could fight, but intelligence reports brought a darker reality. The Zealot Patrol that had been destroyed was just a small group of scouts. The Zealot Empire was vast, and their response was predictable. They did not like to lose. Deep in the cold silence of space, near a blue star system, the main Zealot fleet was gathering. This was not a simple patrol, it was a war armada. Thousands of ships, massive carriers, and dreadnoughts were assembling. They were preparing to jump towards the human colony world of New Hope. Their goal was simple: total destruction. They wanted to erase the humans from the galaxy to avenge their defeat. On the colony world of New Hope, the sky was blue and the sun was warm. It was a peaceful place where families lived and farmers worked the land. But today, fear was in the air. Sirens began to wail in the coastal cities. People looked up at the sky, knowing that the enemy was coming. Commander David stood inside a concrete bunker deep underground. He was a soldier, a man who had spent his life protecting others. He wore heavy combat armor and held his helmet under his arm. His face was dirty with grease, and his eyes were tired. Around him, other officers were running, shouting orders into phones, and monitoring screens. David looked at the large tactical map in the center of the room. Red dots were appearing on the edge of the system. Hundreds of them, then thousands. The numbers were overwhelming. "Report," David said to a young officer. "The Zealot fleet has entered the system, Commander," the officer said, his voice shaking. "It is the main force. Our deep space sensors have never seen this many ships. They will be in orbit in 6 hours. David slammed his fist onto the metal table. 6 hours? That is not enough time to evacuate the cities. We cannot move 5 million people in 6 hours. "Sir, the orbital defense platforms are ready," another officer said. "But they only have enough ammunition for a few hours. Against a fleet this size, they will be destroyed quickly." David looked at the screen. He felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. He was in charge of the lives on this planet. The Vanguard and the Earth fleet were days away. They could not help in time. New Hope was alone. "Send the emergency signal to Earth," David ordered. "Tell them we are engaged. Tell them we are engaged. Tell them we will fight until the end." Meanwhile, on Earth, a meeting was taking place in a high-security room deep below the government buildings. The room was round and dark, lit only by the glow of holograms. The most important leaders of the military and science were gathered there. General Harris, an old man with medals on his chest, stood at the head of the table. The mood was desperate. They had just received the message from Commander David. "We are outnumbered," General Harris said gravely. 10 to 1, maybe 20 to 1. If we send our fleet to New Hope now, it will be a suicide mission. We will lose Earth's defense, and the Zealots will just come here next." The room was silent. Everyone knew the general was right. Conventional warfare would not save the colony. They needed something else, something that could end the fight instantly. "Is the device ready?" General Harris asked. He turned to look at a woman sitting in the corner. Her name was Dr. Emily. She was not a soldier. She was a scientist. She wore a white lab coat and glasses, and she looked exhausted. She had not slept in 2 days. Dr. Emily stood up. She was nervous. "Yes, General. The device is ready. We call it the Graviton Collapse Unit. It is finished." "Can it destroy that many ships?" another officer asked. "Is it powerful enough?" Dr. Emily nodded slowly. "It is not a weapon in the traditional sense. It does not use fire or lasers. It creates a gravity well. Imagine a black hole, but one we can control. When we activate it, it will pull everything within a certain radius into a single point. It will crush the ships. The pressure will be so strong that the metal will turn to dust." "Is it safe for the planet?" the general asked. "The planet will be safe," Emily explained. "The device has a specific range. We will place it in space between the planet and the enemy. The ships will be crushed, but the gravity field will stop before it reaches the planet's surface. However, the room waited. However, once we turn it on, there is no turning it off," Emily said softly. "And the physics of it are terrifying. We have never tested it at full power. It is theoretical." "We are out of time for theories," General Harris said firmly. "The Zealots are at New Hope. If we don't use the device, everyone on that planet dies. We have to risk it." Captain Tom was patched into the meeting via a video screen from the Vanguard. His face appeared on the hologram. He listened to the plan carefully. "I will take the device to New Hope," Tom said. "The Vanguard is the fastest ship we have. We can get there before the fleet begins their bombardment." "Captain, the strategy will be a trap," the general said. "You will have to let the Zealots chase you. You must lure them into the device's range. You have to be the bait." Tom did not blink. "Understood. We will do what is necessary. And if you are too close when the device activates?" Dr. Emily asked. "The Vanguard will be destroyed too." Tom looked at the camera. "I know. But the colony must survive. Humanity cannot be bullied. We have to show them that the consequences of crossing the line are absolute." The connection was cut, and the Vanguard turned away from the Viridian Gap. The engines roared to maximum power. They were on a new mission. Back on New Hope, the situation was getting worse. Commander David watched the screen as the Zealot fleet moved closer. They had destroyed the few defense satellites without effort. Now, the large ships were positioning themselves over the capital city. "They are charging their main weapons, sir," an officer shouted. "We have 3 minutes before they open fire on the city." David closed his eyes for a second. He thought about his wife and daughter who were in the underground shelters. He thought about the people on the surface who would not make it. "Fire all surface-to-air missiles," David ordered. "Aim for their capital ships. Make them pay for every inch." The ground shook as the colony launched its counterattack. Missiles flew up from the surface, streaking towards the sky. But the Zealots had point defense systems that shot down most of the missiles. A few got through and hit the alien shields, causing small flashes of light, but it was not enough to stop them. The Zealots were too powerful. Suddenly, a new ship arrived in the system. It was the Vanguard. On the bridge, Tom watched the radar fill with red dots. The enemy fleet was huge. It looked like a swarm of insects. "We are late," Alice said. "They are already shooting at the planet." "No," Tom said. "We are right on time." "Hail the Zealots," Tom ordered. Mike opened the channel. "They are listening, Captain." Tom spoke loudly, his voice echoing in the silent bridge of the alien command ships. "This is Captain Tom of Earth. You are attacking a defenseless colony. You have one chance to stop and surrender. If you do not, we will use a weapon you have never seen before." The Zealot commander, who was safe in his massive dreadnought, laughed. "You have one ship, human, and you threaten us? We will destroy you and then crush your planet." "Then you leave us no choice," Tom said. Mike, execute the plan. Tom looked at the crew. Bring the device online. Helm, set course for the center of the enemy formation. Do not fire. Let them chase us. The Vanguard accelerated, flying directly towards the massive cloud of enemy ships. It looked like suicide. The Zealots took the bait. Thinking the human ship was crazy or broken, they turned their weapons away from the planet and focused on the Vanguard. Thousands of beams and plasma shots lit up the dark space as they chased the small human ship. Hold steady, Tom whispered. Just a little closer. Dr. Emily had given Tom a small remote control. It was simple, with a single red button. He held it tightly in his hand. The Vanguard was flying into the jaws of death, but Tom was calm. He was carrying the extinction of the Zealot fleet in his pocket. The ship shook violently as it took hits. The shields were dropping rapidly. Shields at 20%, Alice screamed. Hull breach on deck 4. Tom looked at the distance meter. They were in the center of the enemy formation. The device was armed. They are all around us. Captain, Mike said, looking at the screen, which was completely red with enemy ships. Tom looked down at the button. He thought of Earth. He thought of New Hope. He thought of the warning they had issued. Humanity gave you a warning, Tom said to the empty room. You should have listened. Tom pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. The bridge of the Vanguard shook violently as another beam of alien energy struck the shields. Sparks flew from the ceiling, and the smell of burning plastic filled the air. Mike looked up from his screen, his eyes wide with fear. Captain, it did not work, Mike shouted over the noise of the alarms. The device is active, but nothing is changing. Hold on, Tom said, his hand gripping the edge of his chair. It takes a moment to charge the field. Outside the ship, the battle raged on. The Zealot fleet swarmed like angry bees. The Vanguard was right in the middle of them. The aliens could not believe their luck. The human ship had stopped moving and was floating in the center of their formation. To them, it looked like the human engines had failed or the crew had given up. The Zealot heavy cruisers moved in closer, preparing to fire the final shots that would destroy the Vanguard. They ignored the strange sensor readings coming from the human ship. They were too arrogant to check their data. They only saw the prey. Shields are at 5%, Alice yelled. We are taking hull damage. Captain, we have to move. Tom stared at the main screen. He saw the alien ships filling the view. They were so close he could see the lights on their hulls. Not yet, Tom whispered. Suddenly, the color of the space outside began to change. The light from the stars started to bend. It was a strange, twisting effect like looking through a warped glass. The red lights of the enemy engines began to stretch, becoming long lines of color. What is happening? Mike asked, his voice trembling. On the asteroid field, where Sergeant Bob and his squad were hiding, the ground began to vibrate. Bob looked up from his scanner. He saw a strange darkness forming in the space where the Vanguard was located. Beacons are active, Bob said into his radio. The field is stabilizing. Look at the stars. They are disappearing. It started as a low sound, a deep thrumming that could be felt in the bones of everyone in the sector. Then the gravity wave hit. It was not an explosion. There was no fire and no smoke. It was a force of pure physics. The graviton collapse device created a point of infinite gravity, but only for a specific radius. It was like a temporary black hole. The effect was instant and terrifying. The Zealot ships closest to the Vanguard were the first to go. One moment, they were massive warships bristling with weapons. The next moment, they were crushed. The gravity pulled them from all sides at once. The strong metal armor of the aliens crumpled like paper. The ships imploded, folding in on themselves until they were the size of a small car. The silence of space returned. The laser beams stopped firing. The explosions died out. The only thing left was the dark sphere where the gravity weapon was active. Inside the gravity well, the destruction was absolute. The Zealot heavy cruiser that had been preparing to destroy the Vanguard was twisted into a ball of compressed metal. The bodies of the alien crew were gone in an instant, flattened by the immense pressure. The wave of gravity expanded outward. It swept through the enemy fleet. Ships that were further away tried to run, but it was useless. Their engines failed as the gravity pulled at the fuel in the reactors. The structural integrity of the ships failed. Decks collapsed into each other. Weapon systems were ripped off the hulls and sucked into the void. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the gravity shook the ship violently. The crew was thrown from their chairs. Mike fell to the floor, grabbing a railing to stay steady. Alice held onto her console with white knuckles. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by the red emergency lighting. "Report," Tom shouted, pulling himself back to his feet. "The gravity field is fluctuating," Alice yelled, checking the sensors. "It is pulling everything in. We are too close." "Hold the ship together," Tom ordered. "Helm, full reverse thrusters. Get us out of the event horizon." The Vanguard groaned under the stress. The metal hull creaked loudly. For a moment, it felt like the ship was going to be ripped apart. The gravity was strong, pulling at the engines, trying to drag the human ship into the crush. But the Vanguard was built tough. Earth engineers had made it to withstand high G-forces. The engines roared, fighting against the invisible hand of gravity. Slowly, inch by inch, the ship began to move backward. Outside, the scene was like something from a nightmare. The once proud Zealot fleet was gone. In their place was a field of debris. Thousands of ships had been reduced to rubble. The rubble was spinning around the dark center of the gravity well, forming a perfect ring of destruction. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the device shut down. Dr. Emily had designed it to last only 60 seconds. The gravity field collapsed. The dark sphere vanished. The stars returned to their normal shapes. The sudden release of gravity sent a shockwave through the sector. It pushed the debris away from the center. On the bridge, the violent shaking stopped. The Vanguard drifted silently, battered but intact. "Is it over?" Mike asked. Lifting his head from the floor, Tom looked at the main screen. The view was filled with floating chunks of metal and crushed wreckage. There were no more enemy signals on the radar. "Scan the area," Tom said softly. Alice wiped blood from her forehead where she had hit the console. She tapped the buttons, scanning. "Captain, I'm not reading any enemy ships. None, just debris." On the surface of New Hope, the people in the bunkers waited. They held their breath, waiting for the bombardment that would destroy them. But the explosions never came. The ground stopped shaking. Commander David looked at his tactical officer. "Status: the enemy fleet is gone, sir," the officer said, disbelief in his voice. "Sensors show total destruction. It is just a debris field now." David stood up straight. He looked around the room at the frightened soldiers. A slow smile spread across his face. "They did it," David said. "The Vanguard did it." In the asteroid field, Sergeant Bob watched the final remnants of the enemy fleet drift past. It was a graveyard of ships. The Zealot Armada, which had come to conquer, was now just space junk. "Humanity wins," Bob said into his radio. "Tell command we are secure." On the Vanguard, the crew slowly began to recover. The engineers were working to restore the main power. The red emergency lights were replaced by the normal white lights, though many were flickering. Captain Tom walked to the window. He looked out at the devastation. It was a horrific sight, but he knew it was necessary. He remembered the warning they had sent. Cross the line and face the consequences. The Zealots had not listened, and now they were gone. "Captain, I am receiving a signal," Mike said. "It is coming from one of the Zealot escape pods. There are survivors." Tom turned around. "Put them on screen." The face of a Zealot officer appeared on the screen. He looked terrified. His armor was broken, and he was bleeding. Behind him, the escape pod was floating among the wreckage. "We surrender," the alien said. "Please, stop killing us. We do not understand this weapon. We surrender." Tom looked at the alien with cold eyes. "You are the only one left. Our fleet, it is destroyed," the alien said. "We are just scavengers in the wreckage now. You came to our world to kill us," Tom said. "You ignored our warning. You do not get to complain about the consequences. Please," the alien begged. "We will leave. We will never come back." Tom thought for a moment. He looked at his crew. They were tired, bruised, but alive. They had fought against impossible odds and won. But Tom knew that humanity was not a monster. They were better than the Zealots. "Pick up your survivors," Tom said. "Then leave this system. If you ever return, we will not use a gravity weapon. We will just destroy your planets. Do you understand?" "Yes," the alien whispered. "We understand. We are leaving." The screen went black. Tom took a deep breath. "Mike, send a message to Earth. Tell them New Hope is safe. Tell them the line is secure." "Aye, Captain," Mike said. Tom sat back in his chair. The adrenaline was leaving his body, making him feel tired. He looked at the empty stars. The warning had been issued, the line had been crossed, and the consequences had been delivered. The galaxy knew now that Earth was not a planet to be trifled with. Humanity was not weak. They were the guardians of their own destiny, and they would do whatever it took to survive. The silence that followed the battle was heavy and profound. In the Viridian Gap and the New Hope system, the noise of war had vanished, replaced by the quiet hum of survival. The debris field drifted slowly in the darkness of space. Twisted metal, shattered engines, and small bits of Zealot technology floated where a mighty fleet once stood. It was a graveyard of thousands of ships, a stark testament to the power humanity had unleashed. On the bridge of the Vanguard, the mood was somber but relieved. The adrenaline that had fueled the crew was fading, leaving behind exhaustion. The ship's lights flickered occasionally, a reminder of the damage it had taken, but the engines were still running. Captain Tom stood by the window looking out at the destruction. He watched the small escape pods from the Zealot fleet darting through the wreckage, collecting survivors. They were moving slowly, afraid that the human ship might fire on them. But the Vanguard remained still. "They are leaving, Captain," Mike said softly from his station. "The last of the Zealot ships are warping out of the system. They are going home." Tom nodded. "Let them go. They have a story to tell. They need to tell the rest of their empire what happens when they cross us." Alice was at the tactical station, running final diagnostics. "Our shields are holding at 10%, Captain. We have hull breaches on 3 decks, but the crew is safe. No casualties." "That is a miracle," Tom said, "considering what we just faced." In the colony below, on the surface of New Hope, the sun was beginning to rise. The people in the underground bunkers slowly opened the heavy doors. For the first time in hours, they breathed fresh air. They looked up at the sky, expecting to see fire and smoke, but instead, they saw the calm blue atmosphere. Commander David walked out of the command bunker. He looked tired, his uniform dusty and wrinkled. He watched the rescue ships flying overhead, bringing supplies and medical teams to the areas that had been struck by debris. He looked up at the sky, knowing the Vanguard was up there, floating amongst the ruins of the enemy fleet. He felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that without the bravery of Captain Tom and the sacrifice of the Earth fleet, his colony would be a crater right now. "Send a message to the Vanguard," David said to his communications officer. Tell them they are heroes." Back on Earth, the situation was chaotic but joyful. In the government buildings, leaders were hugging and shaking hands. The screens that had shown the terrifying red dots of the enemy invasion now showed a clear map. The threat was gone. Dr. Emily sat in her laboratory, watching the live feed from the Vanguard on her computer. She saw the field of crushed spheres that used to be enemy ships. She saw the devastation caused by her invention. She felt a mix of pride and sadness. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She wanted to explore the universe, not destroy parts of it. But she knew that sometimes, to protect what you love, you must be capable of great violence. General Harris walked into the room. He stood behind her, looking at the screen. "It worked," the general said. "You saved them, Emily. You saved the colony." Emily nodded slowly. "I know. But at what cost? We created a monster." "We created a shield," the general corrected her. "The Zealots will think twice before attacking us again." Days passed, and the cleanup began. Rescue ships from Earth arrived at the New Hope system to help the Vanguard and the colony. Engineers worked day and night to repair the damage. The debris from the Zealot fleet was carefully gathered. Scientists wanted to study the alien technology to learn from it. Captain Tom stood on the bridge of the Vanguard as it prepared to dock with a repair station. The ship was barely holding together, but it had done its job. He looked at his crew. Mike was laughing at something Alice said. The tension was gone. They were just young people again, happy to be alive. Tom walked over to them. "You all did good work," he said. "I am proud to serve with you." "Thank you, Captain," Alice said. "It was an honor to fight under you." Tom smiled. "Let's just hope we don't have to do that again anytime soon." Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, the Zealot Emperor sat on his throne. He listened to the report of the surviving commander. The commander was shaking with fear as he described the battle. He spoke of the human weapon that crushed ships with gravity. He spoke of the black hole that appeared from nowhere. The Emperor was silent for a long time. He looked at the map of his empire. It was vast and powerful, but for the first time in centuries he felt afraid. He had thought the humans were weak, a minor obstacle to be crushed on the way to total domination. He was wrong. "Cancel all further attacks on the human territory," the Emperor ordered. "Pull back our fleets. Do not cross the Viridian Gap." "But, Your Majesty," one of his advisors said, "if we retreat, they will think we are weak." "They are not weak," the Emperor snapped. "They are dangerous. We have fought many races, but we have never seen power like this. They warned us. They told us what would happen. We did not listen. That was our mistake." The Emperor stood up. "Send a message to Earth. Do not threaten them. Just tell them that we acknowledge the border. We will stay on our side." Back in the New Hope system, the repairs were finished. The Vanguard was ready to return home to Earth. Captain Tom sat in his chair one last time before the jump. "Are we ready?" Tom asked. "Ready, Captain," Mike replied. Tom looked out the window at the planet of New Hope. It was safe. The people were rebuilding their homes. The line had held. "Engage the drive," Tom ordered. "Take us home." The stars stretched into lines of light as the Vanguard jumped into warp speed. Later, in the Grand Hall of the Earth Government, a ceremony was held. Captain Tom, Commander David, and Dr. Emily stood on a stage in front of a large crowd. People cheered and applauded. They were celebrating the survival of humanity. Tom stepped up to the microphone. He looked out at the crowd. He saw faces of hope and relief. He knew that this victory was not just for them, but for the future of the human race. "Today, we celebrate a great victory," Tom said. "But we must also remember why we fought. We did not fight because we wanted war. We did not fight because we hate the Zealots. We fought because we had to defend our home. We drew a line in the sand, and when the enemy crossed it, we showed them that we are not to be trifled with." Tom paused for a moment, looking at the flags of Earth hanging on the walls. "For a long time, the galaxy looked down on us," Tom continued. "They saw us as primitive, as weak. They thought they could take our world without consequence. Today, we proved them wrong. We showed them that humanity is strong, that we were brave, and that we will never give up." The crowd erupted in applause again. Tom raised his hand to quiet them. "Let this be a message to the stars. We are humans. We love peace, but we are capable of great destruction if we are pushed. Do not test us. Do not cross the line, because if you do, you will face the consequences." As the ceremony ended, the cameras flashed. The story of the Vanguard and the defense of New Hope would be told for generations. It would be a legend. It would remind the children of Earth that their people were the guardians of their own fate. In the cold vacuum of space, the Viridian Gap remained quiet. No Zealot ships crossed the line. The debris of the destroyed fleet had drifted away, leaving the border clear. The warning had been issued. The threat had been neutralized, and humanity stood tall. They had looked into the face of extinction and refused to blink. They were the masters of their own destiny, and the galaxy would never forget the day Earth fought back. Captain Tom walked out of the hall, feeling the weight of the past weeks lifting off his shoulders. He looked up at the night sky. The stars were shining brightly. "Peace at last," he whispered. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright for Earth and all her children.